So, sorry, I've got to now hide. How do I do that?
Video settings. Go to video settings.
You click on any of us, we don't have any video on, so it will show a drop-down list. Hide all non-video participant.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've got the video settings. I can read it.
All right. Good.
So I want to go to video, right?
I'm gonna chill out.
Hide. There we go. Got it.
That's super chill.
Ah, so you're doing couples therapy today, huh?
Okay.
Sorry.
Buddy, come here. Good boy. Okay. My inner Fluffy is very all over the place.
That's a dog, not a cat, right?
That's my doggo.
Oh.
He just had breakfast. Okay.
So what's the presenting complaint when you try to get close to him at night? He just growls.
Yeah. How did you know that?
Clinical intuition.
That's funny.
How long have you had that dog?
I got him in January. My first dog ever. I've been kind of on a hunt. I've been saying I want a dog for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And finally, there were 2 different shelter dogs that I applied for to adopt that I didn't get because other people got in first and whatever.
Yeah.
And it was kind of my last shot. I could have gotten a puppy from a breeder kind of thing, but I don't have the capacity for a puppy situation. So I really wanted a shelter dog, and he just was perfect. And when I was a kid, I had a stuffed animal named Fluffy that was a white fluffy dog, exactly his size. So I had to call him that because.
How old was he when you got him?
The shelter said he was 6. The vet says he's 9-ish, 10. Some kind of Shih Tzu mix.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
That's great. So are you enjoying having him?
He's like the love of my life. He's amazing.
Yeah.
I am discovering how I'm a terrible trainer. I don't like it. I don't like
So you let him sleep on your bed and you don't feed him from the table, do you?
Well, I try. There's no table. But when I give him people food, I try and make sure I put it in his bowl so he doesn't directly get it from my hand, but I'm not that great at that. He sleeps. He kind of like I got just enough, but not all the kind of training that I should have with him. He has separation anxiety too, so if I leave, he just doesn't stop barking. So I kind of have to do this thing that this being is not geared for. Like I didn't get a dog in order to be a drill sergeant, in a sense, like a dominatrix in my house about every moment about what he's doing.
Yeah.
It's just such a it's so foreign to me. So I've done it just enough that we can coexist happily in whatever pack that we've got going on. And if anything gets too intensely annoying, then I'll cut it out.
That kind of tells you who's present in your relationship with him too, huh?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as I think you know, I'm a great dog lover. They're so much more simple and straightforward than humans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're just I love dogs so much.
Yeah.
You know, they're such soulful, heartfelt creatures, and you know, I don't like cats at all. They play too hard to get. You know.
Yeah, he's got a little cat in him.
Yeah.
But he's just the amount of he's so cute, and he just basically sleeps all day, which is perfect for my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it just I had no idea it would be that way, but like once I brought him into my household, it was all of a sudden just oxytocin. I could feel it, I studied microbiology and science and stuff, and so I like to know that what I'm feeling and the sensations and the thoughts and moods and all the things, like what's happening really. And just the the oxytocin flush is now, I get little hits of it, not like I did when I first got him, but it's such a warming of the space that the coincidence, I guess, that I got him right before all this lockdown happened. So I'm not
Right.
like in isolation by myself, like there is a soul here that I'm relating to.
Yeah.
And then all the shelters are empty now, which is great for the dogs.
Well, you're in the heart of downtown Santa Monica, right? I mean, the beach part.
The beach part, yeah.
Yeah.
So many dogs now. It was I was away for 5 months. I was on the East Coast. And so I was here with him for a month and I walked him. So I knew kind of what the dog traffic situation was on my streets for a month. And then I went away and I came back 5 months later with full blown pandemic going on. And there were at least 3 times as many dogs, at least on the streets. Like the density of people and their companions.
Yeah.
Really astonishing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, should we see what kind of interesting work we can do in the session?
Yeah.
Great. So I suggest that we start with our two preliminary steps about self-connection and then requests, and then inviting in the first two sessions people to sort of guide themselves and me into a good positive state. Would you like to do that?
I can try. We'll see how I'm having a hard time connecting recently. Um, uh, so I really can't lead a thing right now.
Yeah. So just
Uh,
curious, Christina, that it seems clear, correct me if I'm wrong, that as you go to do your work, something inside that really needs some healing and some safety and some space to do some good work starts overwhelming, starts really coming forward and activating strongly. I'm just curious if you have maybe 3 words about what you think she would most need or what she most didn't have that makes it so hard for her.
that space that you were talking about earlier
Uh,
in that coach state, that's kind of that.
so some sort of just unconditional, warm, accepting space.
Mhm,
That's good to know. Isn't it nice that you can know and represent her needs?
mhm,
So just want to put that as a thread um, into our conversation,
mhm,
that something that we can make a commitment to just nurture that across the next hour, that above all, just this human space of you're okay, you're safe,
mhm,
is really, really, really a vital, important need um, that you can kind of put into your daily repertoire of self-care, of self-connection, of self-guidance, of self-awareness.
mhm.
Um, so that sense of safety and acceptance. That's great. That's great. And just I want to express my commitment to be part of the team that offers that sincerely and effectively and kindly. That that younger part of you can feel what it's like to begin to feel supported by that. And I wonder if there's any other words that pop up in terms of, this part of me that I'm finally beginning to talk about more directly or make more visible. I don't know if that's true, but I've seen you be under the influence of those parts. But I think it's the first time I heard you say so with such vulnerability and simplicity and directness that you really need that, and you've missed that a lot in your life. Thanks for letting me know. Is there any other words or needs that you feel are really important to address if you're going to have any sort of sustained well-being and authentic self-love, self-appreciation?
I think I have a pretty good grasp on self-love and appreciation, and that of course there's more, but that feels okay. I think what has been coming up in terms of the work is I feel blocked, and there's a specific sort of thing that has happened in the last few weeks of why that we could get into, but around what the topic is of what this all is. But I definitely feel like the channel is like not open. I can tell that in my process with the art. It's all of a sudden just gone up in my head. Like I don't have,
Yeah.
like I can't get to the space. And there's some sort of re-traumatizing things that are going on right now that some part of me, that like a very young hurt part of me kind of got the light of day for the first time, really, I think, in like 8 years or so. I can describe the circumstances when it's time to do that. But I think
Sorry,
part of that is like,
you said this younger part of you touched the light of day for the first time, and can you tell me what that means? What actually happened?
I don't know if you remember, but I was in a cult for 7 years. And I met you right when I was leaving it, right on the,
Yeah.
so it was very amazing I learned so much from the trans camp and the community and all that in ways that beyond just the work. But how to be a teacher and how to be a leader and how to help people genuinely without hurting them. So a few years ago, article came out in Bloomberg about the whole thing.
Oh, it's the cult is next.
No, it's called One Taste. But I think because of the whole Nexium thing, all of a sudden the topic is up. So who else is like that? And so I was in another cult kind of like that.
Is that a tantric group?
It's an orgasm situation. It's not tantric, it's different, but it is sexuality, orgasm.
Right.
And there are different offshoots of this other group, whatever, and some of them are worse than others, and I happened to be in one that was worse. That was led by a woman, which is interesting what happens in these sex cult groups led by women versus men. But really a incredible specimen of humanity. Like, she's just so amazing. Really high IQ. She studied semantics, like really so smart, so charismatic, total narcissist, sociopath. But you wouldn't know it. It's just stunning to be in her presence. And I left my marriage. I was married to join that group. I just left everything in my life. So that was one moment. You talk about how many times in your life you lose everything. So when I was 28, that was one moment where I literally cut off everything in my life to live in a warehouse under the poverty level with 50 people and no walls for 7 years. And that little girl part of me that needed that space believed that that could be at that space, and so was so devoted, like just gave everything up and believed so sincerely that that love was returned in there and for the benefit of me and us and everybody and whatever. And her specifically, I loved her so much. And I could write a book. I could write many books on that whole, what it is to give up your power completely, and then what it is to reclaim it on the other side. So when I left there was another moment where by that point, my entire universe, even more so than before, like my mind had been taken. Like, brainwashing is real. It's a real thing. It's visceral. It's such a real thing. To leave everything again and recreate the world in reality. And the outside world was so weird and dangerous, but I knew some part of me needed to get out of there. Anyway. And there was a lot of resentment and anger and trauma, and then healing of that and moving on, and a lot of growth. And I've created a great life for myself. And a lot of what makes me amazing, and people come and they're magnetized and I have something to teach them and whatever. I learned so much of what I know in that place. Like, you could not teach this stuff in a PhD in a school, like it's just such a unique thing.
Did she get busted, arrested?
So it blew up even after I left. It got even bigger. It became this whole international thing. It got and this Bloomberg article came out 4 years ago or something, which was a real actual expose. The whole thing was secret, and all of a sudden people were saying the real stuff. I mean, she was on Goop with Gwyneth Paltrow. She got famous, and Tony Robbins took her up. Like, she was Tim Ferriss. She was in the last Tim Ferriss book. Like, she got famous. So finally there's expose, and then that triggered an FBI investigation. So she fled. She sold the company, the people for however many millions. And then it kind of died down, and I was contacted by HBO and by the BBC and by all sorts of journalists, and I wouldn't talk to anybody. But others did, which was great. And part of the reason I wouldn't talk to anybody is that, like, I wouldn't trust any journalist to be able to understand or report the nuances of all that really complex situation. They would just sensationalize You know, it's like, yeah, there's sex trafficking, but it's kind of bad sometimes and kind of fun sometimes, and it's complicated. That's not the problem. The problem is the consent and the manipulation and anyway. So in the last 2 weeks, 3 different, I guess because NXIVM or whatever, 3 different podcasts have come out about them, including a 10-part BBC series. And all of a sudden I'm hearing these voices with people I used to live with, you know, and went through all these things with. So it's kind of stuff's coming up without it being loud or having words to it, but I could feel my body just getting like something. My teeth are clenched a lot of the time, I'm noticing. And
Do you have any connection with former people in that?
just a couple, like those of us that were, so I worked my way into the core and I eventually ran one of the centers in New York. That's why I ended up in New York. Like I was a top-notch, major, mega, right close in person who ran it, part of it.
I can only imagine. I mean, I would assume that would be true, just knowing your talent.
Thank you. And I spent a year, I got at the time it was a great thing as her assistant, which was really a kind of training position. You know, if you really want the knowledge of the great guru, you just, the whole game, everything about it is, can you get closer to her? You know, and somehow that power and awakening will rub off on you. And I mean, every aspect of my life she controlled willingly, and I was happy to do it. It was a fun game, and it really was a fun game, and I did crazy shit. And if I told you the stuff, you'd think that was the stuff that was bad, but it wasn't. That was just fun exploration. What was really harmful was the realization ultimately that the whole time she didn't really care. Like there was a kind of understanding that here's all the things and then you'll teach me and then I'll learn the thing and this is we're on the path together, right? It was one, it's the con of no, there's really no path and we're not on it together, not really teaching anything. And two, I don't really care. So that love that was like, I love, was not a real thing. It was a lie. And so I was asked, because of all the stories and all the things, you know, you should write a book. So many people want me to write a book. And one of the things when I was hired for that position, there were 2 questions, and then I got it because they'd been watching me for years as I'd worked my way up. First was, how good are you at sucking cock? And the second was not a question. It was, don't write a book about this.
What do you mean, 2 questions in the initial conversation?
Yeah, it was like her current assistant kind of left. She was sitting at a table, wherever she was sitting was sort of the magic place in the center that we had. And they kind of called me over, her and her second in business person. And I'd been tapped, and it's like everyone's watching and everybody knew. And it was like the special moment, you know, like, oh, who's going to be the next person? Because her, and I didn't, you know, kind of was like, I wonder why I get to go over to the table. And so the first thing they asked was that. And the first question, how good are your sucking cock, was like, oh, this is why I'm here. And I'm going to be your assistant. They want me to be your assistant, which was exciting. That's when I knew why I would ask me over. And then the second thing was, I gave my answer and they said, don't write a book about this. So then I knew that I got it, you know, that I really was going to do this with her. So I made this commitment. So now I was asked the question a week ago, you know, why don't you write the book about it? It's been so long. You've gone through so much anger and resentment. You've said the things, you've done the therapy, you know, you're over it. And really, I've been over it. And I was crying, and like the first answer that came was, because I don't want to hurt her. Like, which was so weird, you know, like she hurt me and you hurt so many people, FBI is investigating so many people. Why don't I want to hurt her? Like, what is this loyalty about still? Stockholm syndrome or whatever. But that's really what I don't want to hurt. I said I wouldn't, but it's not even my word. I don't care about my word. I'll change that whenever, if it's appropriate. It's more I don't hurt her. But then, and this was that moment where the little girl in the light of day happened. It's more like a feeling, realization of like just how much I was hurt that she didn't love me back, which is so, amongst all the things I could say why the whole experience was this terrible thing, none of the other stuff matters. Like that was, and it sounds so ridiculous and silly and stupid. I've just never said that out loud. I've never admitted that to myself, really.
Just for the record, that sounds just like very basic. It's what I would think of without you telling me about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really touched by your sharing. I remember you in the office here, sharing some piece of it. I think that was like the first time that you were doing intensive work with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel your story in a somewhat different way now.
Mm-hmm.
But that last part, I'm often just noticing how I'm processing up here and how I'm processing down here. And a lot of times what's happening down here is very different from what's up here. But I felt us sort of going away from something, in those last couple of minutes. Like it had no feeling of relevance or resonance to me. But when you're telling the story, for the most part, I felt a really deep connection with where you were speaking from. And yeah, you've got a big challenge, Christina. Because of, I think, two things. One is just how deeply you feel the world. It's really exceptional. And then you've got your sort of childhood history of abandonment and people not being there for you that really traumatizes that young part of you. And when you put those two together, it makes a really sort of powerful combination that could get you into a lot of trouble. I would imagine this leader, I would suspect that she had that combination too.
I just found out recently, we all knew it was part of her story, is that her father died in prison of many things of child abuse. But it was always vague. We never really knew her part of that experience. And I just found out last week or 2 weeks ago that he started having sex with her when she was 5.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to create a sex cult, you probably have a lot of sexual abuse. I'm just saying that, and then when you can't hold sexuality in a personal relationship, but you can do it in a universal way. And listen to those first two questions: suck cock and keep secrets. But anyway, I think where I started feeling a disconnect was every time you started talking about what you're going to do out in the world to either make it right or write a book or do this or do that, something I felt like we were leaving this core connection, which is the place from which it all comes in you before your trauma, without the abandonment and the confusion, and what happened with your parents and your marriage, and etc. I get something in you that really deeply has come into the world to create something. And when you're a kid, you don't have the maturity to know there's a real danger in having this skill. It's just a little nuance between where it goes from light into shadow. And so you need a lot of, training, you need a lot of mentorship, you need a lot of support, a lot of things to work things out slowly without having to make it a home run, without having to make it your claim to fame. But I think it starts with, for better and worse, you've got this, you have a special connection, a special gift.
Thank you. That's nice to hear that.
Sorry?
That's nice to hear that. Thank you for saying that.
Well, you have brought, I think, more people to Trans Camp than any other student of mine. And almost every one of those people, they're really interesting people. Almost all of them. And when I've talked to them about you, they rave about you. They sort of talk about you as somebody who really made a significant difference. A lot of them, like a lot of people get into coaching, are sort of midlife career change. So I was doing something, I was successful, but I was miserable. I wasn't bringing me. And so I got into coaching because I wanted to find a way to bring myself into the world. And that you really were able to mentor that in them. So I'm not saying it just to pat you on the back. I'm saying it because everything you do, you have to realize that's in you. And it always carries a danger, which if you leave it unattended, if you don't care for it and have a personal awareness of it, it's really easy that it will, Jung called it inflation of the archetype, and the world stage is littered with the Michael Jacksons and the Jerry Garcias and the, Marilyn Monroes and those people whose light shined so bright. And when they touch people said, I don't want to see your fucking shadow. Just give me your light, dose me. Just give me that. And you can hear that in the story of the cult leader. That she was amazing, but her gift got totally corrupted. And then, but it's so strong that when she touches others, people don't want to know about your suffering or your shadow. They just want the drug. You know, in my own humble way, I know a little bit about it.
I feel like in the last year, I've been noticing how I do things. And at some point, I feel like I made a choice that I wonder if it's going to destroy my career or not, but like not to do that. Um, not to build an empire, not to create my own religion, not to, like not to do that, get famous. And that feels good. Like there's a weird way where a certain kind of ego ambition is interesting. And my kind of my closer students, Andy's one of them, started trying out showing more of the real thing. And he was in the set. I mean, it's like, do I let my students see me fall apart? Am I not supposed to hold a certain, and it was a experiment, but like, no, yeah, I am. Like, they need to see that it's not about some perfect thing. Like, and then I hope that they can tell that there's integrity there. That might not be as sexy as the shiny whatever.
No, it's not, but you're not selling sex.
Right. Right.
And I think it sort of makes your path, I don't know if serious is the right word, but it's a little bit more challenge because you can't just do the sexy
Right.
shine your light. You realize that is a way of prostituting yourself.
Right.
I think that was one of the first conversations we had, wasn't it?
And it might have been.
About prostituting yourself.
I don't remember. I remember you were doing work with somebody at some point and said something about that, and I got very defensive because I've been an actual prostitute. And I was like, wait a minute, those are amazing people. And it's funny because I have to say this again in the space for the community, in connection to the previous work that was done today. And you were talking about that coach space and then the boys at 4 being kicked off their mother's lap. And when I was an actual prostitute, which was not connected to the cult, it was my own thing, for about a year, that was the majority of what I was doing, and it was amazing. Like it was sort of they wouldn't go to therapist, but I'm okay in terms of their own egos of what they're doing. But really, it was about, and I could do it because was into that. What was more interesting to me was just creating a space to say you're okay and you're worthy and you can have the space and you're awesome and be here and be happy and be held. Everything's wonderful about you was really what was going on.
I know that skill.
Yeah.
And I thrived on it for a long time. And when I went to crash, when the crash took me, it was more and more confusing and more depressing. So I'm just curious, when we started this session and I said, why don't you walk us through a self-connection? And you said, I can't do that on this. There's something inside of me that feels kind of so on edge and out of control. Those weren't your words, but that's my phrasing of them. And you can feel her right now, So I think if you keep her mute and silent and violated in the basement, your work loses its integrity more and more and more at this point. But I know, Christine, I can feel you came in the world to make a really, really good human connection. So the next step is how to find in that fallen angel inside of you that's where your deepest strength for the next step is. And to be able to acknowledge her and hold her and learn that all your tempo and the way that you touch other people cannot abandon her in your process. And I can only imagine that's where the fundamental limits of everything you've known you come up against right there. The feeling that part of you is so unlovable and that will just take you down.
I have a very good friend from that time.
Yeah.
She's an artist. Like she's like a artist. She teaches at the New York School of Fine Art, and she's PhD, and she's and so I've been sharing with her my process now, which is brand new. And I wrote to her yesterday. It's like, I don't like what I'm finding. Like, I don't like what I'm learning about myself through this creative thing that's going on, because it's all just expression or whatever. And I'm trying to I want to make pretty flowers and light pastels in the light. I want to draw the light. Every now and then I do. But like, the stuff that's in there is really dark and intense and not pretty and just fucked up. Like, I don't even I don't want to make art like that. I want to be like the pretty one, like beauty and all the other things, right? Like, and it's like there's a lot of darkness that I didn't know, right? Or I mean, maybe I had a hint at, but I've never really. I don't want that to be me.
But I just want to, point out again that as you go through that process of describing that, you sort of leap all of a sudden to whatever I find inside of me has to give beauty and light to other people. And then you come across, what do I do with this darkness? What do I do with this? Well, the first thing I think is that to feel how addicted you are to performing for others. As a way of prostituting and abandoning and bypassing yourself. Because at this point, authenticity and truth is really your only hope. But I do know that at the heart of that darkness, it's your deepest gift. It will not forsake you. And your willingness to commit to that experiment in truth That's what will give you the moral authority to teach others. Or you just feel as you go through it, everything inside of me is convinced that this part of me is not healable. It has no value. It has no beauty. And still, I say, I open to my heart everything. I open to everything. You know, what others were supposed to be able to help you to learn is how to do that sort of carefully, or, you know, how to slowly learn the skill, you know, how much darkness you can hold before you just need to hold your dog, you know, or talk with a friend. You know, it's a skill. It's not just like throw yourself deep into the pit. It's being on the edge where you can feel there's such darkness, such pain, such craziness. And that's my edge. That's my edge. I've got to drink that darkness into my soul and stay connected. And the nice thing is you start to realize the power that opened all this to you. It's really friendly. You know, it's power in the universe that has tremendous, tremendous kindness to it. So it will be there for you. But you have to really be honest and see all the ways that you develop to prostitute yourself, to just shine the light in the hopes that the darkness could be hidden or abandoned. And again, for what it's worth, I know something about that. And when I was younger, the most ecstatic thing I ever did was to be able to find a place beyond it. You know, I was just in a euphoric state of limitless cosmic consciousness. And it took a lot of defeat to realize, okay, now we do the mature version. Everything I learned in that first half was to really teach me there is something beyond this darkness. Once you know it, then it's time to absorb and integrate the darkness. And nobody's a rock star when they do that. Nobody, you know, it defeats everybody. Defeated Milton Erickson. I saw this guy, Jordan. Do you know what Jordan Peterson is? He was this Canadian psychologist who really big in the conservative right men's movement, because he was speaking out against women's, you know, then anyway, he was sit up straight, you know, be a man. And he was hospitalized with medications, and he's a wreck. He's a train wreck. Look what happened to your teacher. I don't know if you call her your teacher.
I did.
That's the path waiting for you. Probably not at that level, but that's where it heads. That's good to know. So you're really having to face, is there an alternate path between being the superstar and being just the defeated, lonely, traumatized little girl? I think that's where your path is right now. I always joke when I'm in China. I say, I'm here to bring you something we learned in California. It's called middle way. They looked like, no. Yeah, they say it was the guy who was the California governor. His name was Lao Tzu. He's California. Lao Tzu or Schwarzenegger, I don't know. I get them mixed up. But the laughing helps you to just ease the terrible pain.
I feel curious in a way for the first time to explore a little bit.
Yeah.
Without judgment, all the darkness.
And if it helps, I think it will to help you to see that challenge that you're facing is universal. And it's a challenge we're facing at such a deeper level than I've ever felt we've had to face in the last 65 years. You know, in America, that I only see the light, you know, success, positive thinking.
That's my whole industry.
Sorry?
That's my whole industry.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Tony Robbins is sort of like the apex of it. And to be clear, I like Tony. He's actually a good human being to me. I was really surprised, you know, from knowing him a little bit. But he's so driven by that American one-sided pathology. Yeah. So when you start to crash, it's not something you would probably want to wish upon your enemy, but I think in the end, you realize this was one of the most important things to happen halfway through my journey. How old are you? I remember I asked last time.
43.
Sorry?
43.
Yeah. So I just invite you to sense how many, I don't know if the best word is opposite energies you can find inside of you. You know, the part that just wants to be this shooting star, the meteor, the love, the Susie Sunshine. She's really authentic. She's so strong in you. And the part of you is like an old lady dried up in some jail cell. You know, just left for dead. feel my job is to find a center that weaves a connection between these two sides. A part of you that's a little girl who's so desperate for love, so desperate. Don't leave me. Don't leave me. Why am I being abandoned over and over and over? And to feel this largesse, this sort of bigness that you've discovered. And those two, each side contains what the other is missing. And that's what Jung was talking about, alchemy. What he called the transcendent function. That the self is the space where you hold those opposites. And you realize, I have no idea anything that could come out of this. But you see, all your exits are blocked. You logically see everything that you think you could do, be a superstar. But then always ending up late at night all by yourself. Unloved, unseen, uncared for. So in some ways, it's a sort of an act of faith. Let's see. But you just see where what you're doing, where it leads you. Just see that very clearly. Just see what happened to your teacher. And say, I can't do that. I have to have an act of faith and drop it inside. And for you, the fact that you feel the force very strongly. I said before, it's dangerous, but it's also your greatest strength. Because at those times you surrender to a deeper presence, not of this world. It can begin to bring both of those split off sides into a deeper place before things get pushed into opposite. And you feel things moving, breathing, and circulating. So something beyond your ego begins to slowly weave them together. Slowly. You see all the things you have to recognize, acknowledge, see, that happened. That pushed me away. That happened. That pushed me away. That happened. That pushed me away. Each time you recognize it, it brings you closer to your true being, which in the end is the only real hope, is to be true to yourself, your only real hope is to learn to be true to yourself. Each time you do it, it becomes a lot clearer. Well, of course. I've just been so afraid, so unwilling and unable to see all the different sides, the dark and the light. If you ask me, I think that's the work that you've come to do. But it's for you to decide. I think we just know that when the suffering continues and then when it gets worse, it means you're unwilling to see something inside yourself. That's what suffering is. Something is saying, see me, feel me. And there's no connection for it. In the first half, oh, my mother should do it, my father should do it, my boyfriend should do it, my students should do it, other people, my teachers should do it. Somebody else needs to see me and bless me. It's really painful to see it didn't happen. I wanted it, I deserved it, I needed it. Okay. So I go forward and I be the first one to see me.
It's interesting when you say suffering. Oh my God, I don't resonate with that because then I'm like, oh, because I equate that with sadness and a certain thing. And what it feels like right now, or has what is happening, is more a blocking, like a numbing out. So there's no suffering. And as we've been working, the darkness that wants to be looked at now, but I've been avoiding, is not what I would, it's not sadness. It's like anger and hate and fury and uh, that I don't equate that to suffering. I equate that with like destruction. In a way, it's easier than suffering, but I just don't like. Like, there's something bad about that.
People who are abusive, angry bastards are suffering a lot. I mean, what do you think the point is in abusing somebody? Is to think of, here, if I project it onto them,
Right.
Maybe I'll be free.
Totally, I get it.
But actually, I thought that last part was a bunch of bullshit on your part. But when you shifted from the sadness to the anger, I don't know if you saw something sat up. I sat up a little bit more. I was like, wow, that's really beautiful that she's presenting that. She said, I've always sort of suffered under the veneer of sadness, but you want to know about my suffering? It's got a lot of rage and a lot of anger and destructiveness.
Yeah, that felt good. I've never said that before.
People did a lot of stuff to you that shouldn't have happened. That rage and that anger, it's love. You know, I think you may have heard me say, I think that's the main reason I did martial arts for 26 years, was to try to find a way to connect to my anger. I'm still a little baby, you know. When I feel anger, it so often takes me over. But I had a great Thanksgiving. I think it's okay to say, you know, my sister was down and my daughter's living with me. And there was some little thing, it was sort of like an old pattern. You know, one of those things when you get together with family, that these little old triggers, you know, happen. And it happened. And so it wasn't like anything Zoe was doing, but I didn't suppress it. And I didn't just put a smile, or I didn't say, come on, just center yourself and be accepting and you know, let's move on, because that's what I covered up in my family, you know, and partly because there's no fucking skills, no capacity to humanly experience and express it. So I went through this process. It took about an hour and a half, and I felt so good about it. And my communications with my daughter, about 45 minutes through, really shifted to a really authentic way of being connected with her without abandoning myself. So I feel like I'm a little.
That sounds like a very good thing to do. How do you do?
Sorry?
How do you do that?
Well, you know, you heard me saying, for me, it's like partly it's really seeing anything that I do with dissociation just makes things worse. If I just try to be nice and say I'm not hurting or I'm not feeling upset, it just creates the artificial grounds that breed that pathology in me and in my community even more. So it's like I'm in a negative double bind. I think that's the really good thing. If I act it out, that's not going to be positive. If I hold it in, and to really get clear and then love myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like I can imagine I'm not a woman, but what it must be like to give birth. Because it's not like, okay, I'll have the baby now. Yeah. But I think it's learning how to bring a simple, kind connection to suffering. Not to wallow in it, not to think life is suffering. Life is so many things. Life is like fun. Life is serious. Life is depressing. Life is infuriating. Life is suffering. So much suffering. As part of our collective calling to witness, for example, I've been involved in Black Lives Matter, and you're really trying to open to what racism, what has it been for like Black Americans to be fucking slaves for 400 years and tortured and lynched and raped and sold. And it's like unfathomable, or to feel, how women have been treated. There's so much suffering. So that the feeling is not to give in to suffering, but to open to it. And then to choose life. Any way I can support you, in a way that has integrity for our relationship, you have my commitment. Well, that's some really good teachers, and I studied my really close teachers. I studied them really carefully, and most of them were healers who really knew how to welcome other people's darkness without losing their light. But maybe only half of them at most could do that with themselves. And it was been one of the most confusing things of my professional development. Yeah.
How could you tell? Like what felt different with the ones that could?
Well, how you deal with like the shadows, or you just start noting what's their relationship with their kids. Are they? I always imagine, like, one of the things is as I look at the person's good self, I go, oh, this is, and it's authentic. They're so amazing. But when they're home at night all alone, how do they feel?
Mm.
Or, somebody like Milton Erickson, I mean, to hear him say that he could never let anybody put him into trance. And he was in such pain. It's really hard. But I try to take it as a lesson. Virginia Satir, she had adopted children who wouldn't talk to her.
Mhm.
She had 3 failed marriages. So what she could do for others, she couldn't do for those same places inside of herself. So it's sort of, I don't know, I feel that my generation and your generation, we have a different calling around that. My teachers were such a pioneering, people like Erickson or Satir. They were so on this revolutionary, transformational thing of bringing that energy in the world. I don't think they could at the same time apply it to their own personal invisible woundedness.
Mhm.
And as we talked about, you have to be very aware that if you have a gift, there's there are some people that want to suck it dry. It's not because they're bad people. It's just there's that energy where you see light, and we've been taught to be a consumer. Yeah, give me your light, give me your light, give me your light, and and so all that sort of unlimited light, you have to learn how to have boundaries,
Mhm.
and you have to learn to feel. There's a part of me that hasn't emotionally grown much at all. It struggles a lot. And if I deny that, then I'm basically a prostitute. I just fulfill people's fantasies.
Mhm.
I'm just a drug. And I die like all those guys died, lonely. Howard Hughes, Elvis Presley, Jerry Garcia, Michael Jackson, Marilyn Monroe. I was in AA for like 2 or 3 years because I had this whole fling with cocaine. And one of the things they say in AA that I found so helpful was remember what brought you in. And I don't mean that you're giving like just exclusive, but to say where you always, if you're an addict, you think, I have total control. I can live without this anytime. And most of people go into recovery when they get to a place where the addiction has just taken over completely. Most people come into therapy or coaching, or they've hit a place where that part of that wounded part of themselves that they could keep at bay.
Mhm.
Sometimes be overwhelmed, but then you recover and you get back out into the light, and it's not going away. It's actually increasing. That's what I feel is happening in you. I don't know if that's true.
Um, I don't know. I don't know what's not going away.
Well, before you always had this sort of smile and this sort of nice part, and you could get emotional but sad, as you say. But you were right out of the box today, saying I can't bring positive connection to myself. You'll have to do it for me, or you take the lead.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the first time I've really heard you lead with this part of me that it just feels totally hopeless and helpless. It's getting stronger.
Gotcha.
That's where most of us change.
Oh, I get it.
We realize that the exits are blocked.
Yeah, it felt like I was strangled, like, and just the channel just like that thing opened and it whatever it is arose. I let it out somehow. It just arisen in the last 2 weeks, and it just shut the whole thing down. Which, from other things you've said in the past, it's like, oh, now I'm ready to be.
Right.
It wouldn't have been conscious, or it wouldn't have let it come out if I wasn't with it enough to be able to meet it. And
Yeah. So then it's like feeling somewhere a little bit lower, a place where you can hold that Susie sunshine and let your pain be visible at the same time. Both of them. Both of them.
mm-hmm.
So I see your Susie sunshine. Amazing. She's an amazing being. Authentic. And I see your terrible, terrible sadness. I see both.
I want you to see the part of me that wants to kill something.
Okay. Wait, no need to smile. I hear that. I don't want to be your helpless little girl. I want to be this fucking woman who's saying, I'm not taking this shit.
Right.
Anymore.
Mm.
I see that. I hear that.
I think there's a difference in how it came out when I said it and how you just repeated it to me. And the way I said it, that feels out of control, destructive, which is why I don't know how to do that yet. Like the translation to what you did is what I haven't.
What we study in the work, right? But you give it a positive human name. You let it sit in your body. You release everything else except staying connected with the presences and communities, support you.
Mm-hmm.
Support you. We see you, Christina. We support you. We offer you a place where you can just be everything truly that is you. Anger, rage, light. I feel it inside of me. I feel that what in Buddhism is called Sangha. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's, by the way, the drive that brings people to cults.
Which one?
I just want a community that gives me unconditional love.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Totally.
And then cult, well, the first one's free.
Right.
And
That
then,
yeah.
It's, so the second part is centering, which is I don't give my power away to anybody. I don't let anybody tell me who I am or what I should do. I'm responsible. I still need community. Sangha, Buddha, Dharma. Okay. Okay, if we stop here. Well, I sort of lost track of time, it seems. So there's your spiritual advisor. If we get in,
It was like, we're done on this cow. We gotta get some water.
Lizzie, I thought you were gone. Who? Lizzie. Yeah.
I just wanted to stay to the end and say thank you. That was really incredible. Really felt connected to your deep suffering, and it was quite a journey. So I'm gonna just leave it at that and say thank you, Christina. You're an amazing and very gifted person, and truly deeply love you. So good night.
Thank you for
See
sticking
you
around.
tomorrow.
Take care. Okay. Okay, if we open to other voices, Christina?
Yeah.
So this is the part we should record, or
Oh yeah, do you want to record this? Yeah. Okay, to record it, Christina?
Yeah, I am recording it. Should I stop recording it?
Well, I'm saying if we have a separate recording, then you can treat them
additional
as
record?
Gotcha. Okay.
separate segments
So I
that
will
you can
stop
do